Hello and welcome back to another episode of Our Home Ground, where the women's game feels personal and powerful. I am so excited to be back for another episode. I have so much fun doing this. I know I say that every time I record, but it's just true. So I hope you guys are having fun as well. If you are, I would love it if you subscribe, comment, I don't know, things that you would want me to talk about or things that you find interesting. Would love this to become more of like a dialogue kind of situation and maybe carry conversations over from like week to week. But at this point, I'm not doing that yet. So that would be really fun. We're also on social media, Instagram and TikTok. So you can follow us on either place. I'm trying to be a little bit more active, especially on the Instagram side of like sharing things kind of in the moment that I'm seeing and really enjoying. So if you want that and you're not already following us there, would love to see you guys there. So, yeah, this is really fun. Today's episode is going to be again just kind of like a mixed bag. I don't have a theme for this episode either, just kind of like a update on what I found interesting. Again, I was just writing notes in my phone app about like what I saw as things were going, a lot of it on social media. We are back from international break and there were WSL and NWSL games over the weekend. NWSL Decision Day was crazy as it always is. I think the real talking point there is that Gotham ended up in eighth place, which is the last team who gets into the playoffs. They had already like qualified for the playoffs, but because Louisville won and Gotham lost, Louisville ended up in seventh and Gotham in eighth. So I think that's just like really interesting and something that I certainly was not expecting. Really excited for the playoffs to kick off with NWSL. It's so fun. Very, very American, it feels like, to have this kind of tournament at the end of the season. So, very excited about that. And then there was just some other stuff. It was Halloween weekend. There was funny things going on around the soccer community. And so I want to talk about some of it. And then, of course, we will get into the Mary Earps of it all a little bit. I'm still kind of like forming opinions on the whole thing as more information is continuing to roll out. I'm recording actually on Tuesday afternoon for it to release, this pod to release tomorrow morning. So this is going to be kind of the most like up-to-date information that I can like possibly do and get it edited and uploaded on time. So hopefully it'll be interesting and not like super out of date by the time I post it tomorrow. So, yeah. One of the first things that I saw that I wrote down in my notes that I thought was really, really funny is this interaction between Frida Monum and Mariana Caldente on Instagram. So Frida Monum plays for Arsenal and she usually wears gloves. Anytime it's like even chilly at all, she'll be wearing short sleeves but has her gloves on. It's her thing. Everybody knows about it. She didn't wear them when she played with her national team. And Mariana commented on her like dump from the national team post, Frida's dump, and was like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay? Where are your gloves?" And I just think that's so funny that like they're poking fun kind of at her too about it because I know that we as fans all like know her for it. And so to see that kind of little like banter online was really fun, especially between two people, Mariana and Frida, who seem like so sweet and silly. And so to see that little banter online, I just thought was so fun because they're not necessarily like the personalities that Arsenal like markets the most in terms of like who's doing all their media stuff and that kind of thing. And so I just thought that it was really fun and cute and I really, really appreciated it. The other thing that I thought was so funny has to do with the Chelsea team. They played on Friday night, so they all went out together. I think it was on Saturday. It might have been on Friday after the game. I'm not actually sure. I can't remember. Slept since then, but they had like a Halloween party that it appeared that the whole team was like going together. And so there were a couple of like pairs of people who like dressed up in similar things. So Ellie Carpenter and Alyssa Thompson were was Men in Black? Is that even what they are? What they had the aliens and they were like dressed in all black, and that was really funny. But they were wearing like cute, sexy is like too aggressive of a word, but they like looked nice, kind of thing. And then Aggie Beaver Jones and Vika Captine went together as Oompa Loompas, and they literally like painted themselves orange and had the green wigs, and it was so funny because there's like it gets to the thing of like there's two different types of girls on Halloween or whatever. And it was just so funny because Vika and Aggie were just so funny and they like posted a TikTok during the like dance. And I was just giggling because they both of them are beautiful girls and they could have gone as this sort of more like, I don't know. I don't even know what to call it, but you guys, I think, know what I'm talking about. Kind of Halloween vibe, but they went for the like funny, goofy, and I really, really appreciate that and thought it was so funny. I sent it to like everyone I know. I was like, guys, look at this. I'm obsessed. So that I really, really appreciated. One thing that I saw that I thought was really, really sweet was Wolfsburg played a game and their fans made this sign. It was a really big sign that went like across part of the stadium, wishing speedy recovery to several of their former players who are out with kind of major injuries. Maybe all of them. No, not all of them have ACLs, but they're all out for like a period of time. And that included Froms, who we've talked about, Ava Payor, who we've talked about, Diana Nemeth. We haven't talked about her, but she's out with an injury. And then Lena Oberdorf. And I just thought that was really sweet because none of them play for Wolfsburg anymore, to my knowledge, but they've all gone through that. So for them to be kind of like uniting as a women's soccer community around these people who have these really devastating injuries, some a little bit more devastating than others, but are out for a period of time right now, I thought was really, really sweet. And I really appreciated that. And that's the kind of like camaraderie and community feel that makes us love the women's game. And so, yeah, I just really, really enjoyed that. Hannah Hampton was named UK Glamour Woman of the Year, I think is the official title. She looked so good in the dress that she wore too. She looked so confident. And I was so excited for her. And then the acceptance speech that she gave was beautiful. This beautiful monologue about sisterhood and the importance of the women around her and in her life. And she talked a lot about how together we rise higher and sort of coming together. And then she has this one quote, and I'm going to read it. She said, "Empowered women don't wait for permission. We build our own tables, pull up extra chairs, and make sure every sister has a seat." And I just thought that was so incredible and gorgeous and just really interesting timing based on how the rest of the weekend has gone. I think she accepted this award late last week, and then over the weekend, all of the Mary Earps stuff kind of started happening, and just to see Hannah give this kind of speech about, and she thanked like the supportive women in her life, including her Lioness teammates and coaches, and her Chelsea teammates and coaches, and all of that. And I just thought that on its own was really, really beautiful. Now I think it's interesting to look at that based on some of the other things that have happened, transpired since then. But I'm going to put a pin in all of that and we will come back to it because there are a couple of other things I want to talk about before we get into the Mary Earps of it all. One of those things is Portland Thorns played the Houston Dash on decision day, the last day of the regular season in the NWSL. And Avery Patterson is someone who has been called up into the US Women's National Team, and she plays for Houston. And then Sam Coffey, also mainstay for the US Women's National Team, plays for the Portland Thorns. They were playing and something happened. It was this weird kind of situation in which Avery Patterson had like was all the way at like the end line attacking. She had like tried to cross the ball in. It ricocheted off the defender, but like came up and hit her like in the face. And she like went down. And it was really sweet. A couple of her teammates went over, but Sam Coffey like ran over from like across the field to go check on her. They are not on the same club team, but they play together on the US Women's National Team. They have gotten to know each other seemingly quite well. And I just thought that that was really, really sweet that Sam went out of her way to run over and like check on her and like stayed with her for a second. It was just like, "I'm here, like, are you okay?" And waited for her trainers to come over. And I just thought that was a really beautiful sportsmanship moment. And again, this like community and camaraderie. Some things are bigger than football. And I think injuries are certainly one of those things. And so to see Sam Coffey really illustrate that to us that way, I thought was really special and makes me have even more, if it was possible, respect for Sam Coffey. She's fabulous in all the ways. So really appreciated that. The other thing I want to talk about is there are two players who I love, I'm big fans of, who reached milestones for their clubs over the weekend. So one of whom, and that is the person actually on the jersey that I'm wearing, I'm not going to turn around because it's not going to matter, is Mariana Caldente made her 50th appearance for Arsenal, which is insane. And to put that in perspective, Georgia Stanway, who plays for Bayern Munich and has played for them since the 2022-2023 season. So she played with them 2022, 2023, 23, 24, 24, 25. So this is her fourth season with them, if I've done my counting on my fingers math correctly. I believe this is her fourth season with them, and she reached her 100th appearance. Mariona is on her second season with Arsenal and has already reached her 50th cap at like the beginning of the season. So she is like playing so many games and just so many minutes for Arsenal and just in this sort of like atmosphere of so many injuries in the women's game. I'm really keeping an eye on like player load and how much players are playing. And Mariona is playing a lot. She plays a ton of minutes for Arsenal. She plays a ton of minutes for Spain. She's fabulous. Like I cannot blame them for wanting to play her, but I do worry about player safety for a lot of these players who are putting in those kinds of minutes as well for their club and country. And so just something to keep an eye on. Congratulations to Mariona for 50 and Georgia for 100 at their respective clubs, but just like the time frame in which they have reached these milestones, I have like a little bit of an eyebrow raised for Mariona, and I just hope that she can stay really healthy. So there's that. And now it's time to get into the Mary Earps of it all. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm gonna be really shocked because this is like the only thing I've been seeing on all of my timelines is the Mary Earps of it all. Where I do want to start is the first thing that I saw about her book. Mary Earps wrote a book, so we'll start there, I guess. So Mary Earps wrote a book, and I believe it comes out on the 6th of November. It's coming out very soon, so she's doing a bunch of like press about it. One of the first things that came out is that she does confirm in her book that she has been in a loving relationship with another woman. So Mary Earps has come out, which I think I'm just so excited for her that she's like ready and feels comfortable to do that and come out. It is never our place to like force anyone to do that, but I'm happy for her that she has made that decision for herself. I don't know what the situation is, if she was like already out to the people who were close to her in her life, or if this is kind of like new for everyone, but she just said that she couldn't tell her story, tell her truth without coming out. And so I'm really excited for her. And I think the representation of queer relationships in women's sport is so important. I think it would be so important in men's sports too, but I just think we're not quite there yet for that to be as accepted and celebrated in the men's sports as it is in the women's sports. And so I just am happy for her. I want to say like congratulations. I don't know if that's actually appropriate here, but I'm just excited about the impact that these kinds of things are going to have on future generations and on our current generations about what it means to be out and visible and be in a same-sex relationship and all of those things. And so for that, I'm very, very excited for her. I think the other things that have come out, I don't have quite as positive of an attitude about. So the first sort of excerpt from her book that she published was an excerpt about her retirement, um, about the conversation that she had with Serena regarding her retirement. You can find lots of clips of this online. I'm not gonna like read the whole thing too, but it was like two clips that she released to The Guardian. Um, one of which was the conversation that she had with Serena, and Darren, I think is the goalie coach for England's name. They asked her to stay behind in a after a meeting. She thought that was embarrassing. She didn't appreciate that they did that. She said she felt like a school child who was like getting called to the principal's office in front of everyone. She found that to be embarrassing. And then they told her like Hannah's gonna be number one for now. And she said to Serena, that feels like you're rewarding bad behavior, and it feels like you haven't like been transparent with me. You could have told me sooner. Mary seemed to think that they had made their decision up significantly earlier and just weren't telling her that. Again, all of this is Mary's retelling of the events, but Mary has said that Serena replied with like, "No, like we just made our decision. I'm telling you, sort of as soon as we have made that decision." And then Mary's response was, "That sounded like bullshit to me," or something to that effect. Bullshit was definitely the word that was used. And this has caused like a ton of controversy. She went on to say that like this I won't be playing for England then anymore, that it went against her like morals and values to stay in a team in which Hannah was playing number one. And it seems to be surrounding this idea of, quote, Hannah's bad behavior without any detail or discussion of what this bad behavior was. It is true that Hannah Hampton was dropped from the England team for a while following the 2022 Euros. There were a lot of rumors at the time that it was because of her behavior, but then leading up to the 2023 World Cup, Serena told the team, like, I'm going to call Hannah back in. I think she deserves a second chance. She was 21 at the time. My understanding is that Serena had like been told that she'd been really working on her attitude and was in a much better spot that she would be ready to come back to the England team. So she did. Mary released a part of her book in which she told Serena that that made her feel very uncomfortable. She didn't want Hannah to be back in the team. And then when she retired, Mary said something to the effect of like, it's time for like Kiara to have her turn. And wasn't clear if she meant like she thinks Kiara should be the starting goalie or if she was saying that like Kiara should be the second keeper now. Wasn't really clear. But there was a lot of discourse online about this. People had very, very strong opinions, and I think kind of rightfully so. I don't want to just like pile on because I do think Mary Earps wrote a book. She gets to write her own book and tell her story in her own way. I do worry a little bit about the way that she's telling her own story, which maybe seems a little bit hypocritical after what I just said, but Mary's brand has always been like be unapologetically yourself. Like her merch says those kinds of things, which I think is really, really important. But there are ways to tell your story and your perspective on something that don't include disrespecting the people involved. I've read several other players who have written books, Beth Mead to be included in that, Megan Rapinoe to be included in that, who I think are relevant. They spoke honestly about their situations. Megan Rapinoe spoke about being left out of U.S. Women's National Team camps because she knelt during the national anthem, and she spoke honestly about that, but not disrespectfully. It wasn't the same tone I think that Mary has seems to be using in her book. Beth Mead, when she was left off of the Olympic team by a coach who she just like didn't find Beth to be favorable and didn't select her for his squads often, left her out of teams and stuff. She was very honest about how that was really hard for her. And she's like, went so far as to say, like, I was sort of in such a bad mental place that I honestly did wish that my teammates didn't do well. But she talks about it in such a way where she seems to like not be defending those thoughts of hers, where she recognizes that came from like a place of hurt and she's like reflecting on it, being honest about the way that she was feeling at the time, but not saying like that's the right way to do it. So I do wonder in Mary's effort to be like unapologetically herself, if she is overstepping maybe a little bit in the way that she's telling it, or maybe it's just so fresh. I mean, this all happened in like April. It's only November. The book is going on sale. This book probably was finished in like June or July, just based on like timing of how production works and publishing works, in my understanding. The book is usually finished like a couple of months before it actually goes on sale. So everything was just still so fresh. And so maybe that's part of it. And that's why the tone is coming off the way that it was. And again, you get to include in your book whatever you want to include. I think my issue with it is she chose which portions of the book to release to the Guardian for press and PR for selling her book. She chose to use these sections that spoke quite negatively and derogatorily, and I would argue disrespectfully, about not only Hannah Hampton, but also Serena Wiegman and Darren, the goalkeeper coach. And then, so the discourse online was not good. Mary didn't look favorable. People were quite upset. Again, I don't think Mary deserves anybody to be sending her like hateful things. I do think a level of accountability is allowed. And of course, people are going to have opinions, and she has had interviews since and said those things, but like these are the portions of the book that you chose to use to sell your book, and they're provocative. And that's a choice. But you have to be ready for people to not perceive you well if that's what you're going to do. And I don't think she was ready for that at all. She put like a 5 slide thing on her Instagram, which very much to me felt like a little bit of playing the victim and like everyone is just misunderstanding and then pitting women against each other. And that's not who I am as a person. And just like she seemed like shocked and surprised that people were perceiving her the way that they were. And that to me is like the problematic part. You put this out there. These are your words. I do tend to have a little bit more sympathy if it's like an interview that you've done with someone else and then they like choose snippets out of context and put them in. But like these are portions of your book that you chose to pull out of context. And I do recognize that there is probably a larger context to the book, but you and or your PR team chose these to be the ones. And so I do think you get held accountable for it. Like that's just the reality. She then released, I think it must have been yesterday or maybe it was on Sunday. I don't know. It's all running together. She released other snippets of the book talking about her penalty save at the World Cup in the World Cup final. And then like mentioned the sexual assault that happened to Jenny Hermoso, but like she literally wrote 2 sentences about it and then like brushed past it and then said the other 2 talking points about the World Cup directly related to me. And I don't know, that gives a little overly inflated sense of ego to me. I am a US women's national team fan, so I also am assuming that everybody was talking about the fact that the US women's national team flamed out. But there were so many other talking points from the World Cup. There were not just 3 talking points from the World Cup. Maybe she meant just from like the final. Again, this is taken out of context of the book. I don't even know what 2 talking points she's talking about. One of them seems to be her penalty save, which she described as she said something to the effect like this penalty save has been described as what incredible, even heroic, or something to that effect. And just like I'm surprised by her like writing that about herself and the kind of like ego that I attach to that. And maybe I'm just not comfortable with a woman speaking that openly about herself and I'm willing to like reflect on that a little bit. But I also think it is it the excerpts that she's released have a certain tone that is not the tone of a person that like I'm super interested in being friends with. Not that I ever be friends with Mary Earps, not that she even knows I exist. And so I worry that this book was written at a time in which she might not have been in a great mental place because she's been really open about her own mental health struggles. And so I worry that she wrote this book from a place where she was struggling. And so it comes off in ways that she might a year, 5 years, 10 years down the road have some like different opinions about. And I don't know, and maybe not, maybe I'm completely wrong, but I was excited about the book and I was planning on buying her book and I was even like potentially ready to pre-order it before this sort of PR stuff came out. She started like really promoting it in these ways. And I think right now I'm gonna hold off on buying her book. That's just my opinion. I don't know. Nobody needs to follow this. I'm not advocating for this at all. But I'm just not sure that I want to support the way that this has gone at this moment. I think it's a bold strategy of a way to promote your book. And it's just a strategy that I don't really love. They just released, I think maybe with the Telegraph, like a 24-minute interview in which she attempts to explain it. I haven't watched the whole interview. I've seen a few clips from it. I've just been too busy, quite honestly, to have time to watch it. But again, she's like coming at this like people are just misunderstanding and I'm being misrepresented. But they're her own words in her own autobiography. And maybe she had a ghostwriter. I'm not actually sure if she did or not. But either way, like you and your ghostwriter decided on these things and you would be able to tell your ghostwriter that you didn't want things in the book or stated a different way or whatever. and you didn't. And so I'm having a little bit of trouble having like sympathy for the like I'm being misrepresented or people are misunderstanding me when it's your own words. So I have never really been a big Mary Earps fan or not a big Mary Earps fan. She's been just kind of like part of it. I thought she was an entertaining goalie to watch, like all of those things, but she hasn't been somebody who I've like followed super closely. And so I just think it's not sad. I don't want to say I have like pity for her. Maybe it is a little bit sad, but I think this is really tarnishing her reputation and she did some incredible things with England. They achieved incredible things. She played in a World Cup final. She won the Euros with them. Like she's done so many incredible things. And now for this to be like the narrative around her retirement, I think is, yeah, maybe it is sad. Maybe sad is the word that I want to use for it. And I just wish it was different, I think. So yeah, I don't know. People are going to have a lot of opinions about this. And again, I do recognize that Mary Earps has been very honest about her own mental health struggles. And so I just worry that she wrote this book in a time in which she was not in a great place and made some decisions that maybe she wouldn't have made if she was in a different place. And so hopefully that's not the case. And hopefully she's really proud of it and she feels like she was unapologetically herself and she feels like it represents her well. And then we're all just gonna read it or not read it and have whatever opinions we have on the matter. But yeah, I don't want to belabor the point. Oh, something I did want to bring up though that I thought was really impressive. Hannah Hampton hasn't said anything about it, which I think is great. But Sonia Bonpastor did speak out on it. She is the Chelsea coach, so she's Hannah's club coach at the moment. And what I really appreciated that she said is she was kind of snippy in some of it, which again, like she's defending her player, which I can respect. Again, it gets snippy because she feels like her player's being attacked, and I can't blame her for that. She said something to the effect of like, it's the disrespect that's a problem. The way that she's talking about her teammate is disrespectful. And she wanted to speak up for Serena Wiegman and say that like the way that she's speaking about Serena is also disrespectful. Serena is the most decorated international coach of all time. She has been in 5 consecutive major tournament finals. Although I guess that we don't include the Olympics in major tournaments, but we do. So I don't know. Anyways, 5. She was in Euros 2017, World Cup 2019, Euros 2021, World Cup 2023, Euros 2025. 2 of those with the Netherlands, 3 of those obviously with England. So to like say that like the things that she was alluding to in that conversation that she had, Sonia seemed to think were quite disrespectful. I would agree. And it goes against everything that I've ever heard about Serena, that she's a great communicator. She's very honest with everyone. And so Mary is very much taking a stance by the things that she said, and it's a stance that's not necessarily been well supported by other information. Again, different people are going to have different opinions about coaches, and you're allowed to do that. And but there are just like I was talking about with Beth Mead and Megan Rapinoe's books, like there are ways to talk about it, which you can be honest, but be a little bit more respectful than I think Mary was. And so, yeah, I don't know. I was going to say something else, but I have now forgotten about it. But we'll see what happens. And hopefully, we will get a better context when the whole book is out and we can understand it in sort of its entirety and all of the things that she has to say. But yeah, the whole thing has been wild. And I did see people on the internet have been like, sure, some of them ruthless, but some of them also kind of funny. And so you got to find humor in situations as well. And I don't know what to say about the matter other than like, whoa, there's been a lot going on. And so I hope that Mary has people around her who are taking care of her, supporting her in this time. I hope the same for Hannah Hampton, that she has people who are supporting her and around her at this time while all of this is going on. Um, and anyone else who's like involved in the situation, Mary's friends who might be like confused and like sort of unsure how to navigate this situation because many of them are going to be friends with Hannah as well. And so it like puts them in a potentially awkward situation. Anyways, not to belabor the point, but the Mary Earps of it all has just been really interesting. We'll see what happens. And yeah, so I think that's all I have to talk about today. More NWSL action coming this weekend. It is the quarterfinals of the playoffs, WSL this weekend, and then next week we get more Champions League on Tuesday and Wednesday. So I'm excited. I think it'll be really fun. Arsenal plays Chelsea this weekend at Arsenal, and then I believe Arsenal is playing Bayern at Bayern in the week for Champions League. So I'm really excited. Should be really good games. Hopefully, Arsenal just like runs the show. We'll see. They had a great performance against Leicester, so hopefully we can just keep that going. And then the weekend after that is North London Derby where they play Spurs. Very exciting, very, very exciting time. So let me know what you guys think. Who has thoughts about any of the things that I've said? And yeah, like I said at the beginning, give us a follow on social media, like, subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, all of those things. I love being here. I hope that you love being here, and I hope that you all have a great week. See you next time.